I never thought my life would start falling apart the same night I was trying to save someone else's. The sirens screamed before I saw the lights. Red and blue flashed through the hospital glass doors, washing over the white tiles like blood and sea. It was past midnight. I was supposed to have gone home hours ago. My twins were sleeping in the staff room, curled up under my spare jacket. Then the ambulance screeched to a stop. Male, early 30s. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, possible kidney rupture. The paramedics shouted as they burst through the doors. I grabbed the gurney, pushing alongside them, heart racing. The man on it was barely conscious. Tall, broad-shouldered even through the wreck of torn clothes, his face smeared with blood and glass dust. His scent hit me before anything else, strong, commanding, distinctly alpha. It clung to the air like thunder before rain. We rolled him into Trauma Room 3. The doctor barked orders. I moved by instinct, suction for line, compressions when his breathing faltered. His body jerked once. Then again. Flatline. Charging to 200, someone yelled. My hands trembled as I pressed the pads to his chest. Clear. His body lifted, slammed down, then. A heartbeat. I exhaled so hard it hurt. Stabilize him, Dr. Hahn said. We'll transfer him to ICU. Massive kidney trauma, internal bleeding, possible failure. Kidney failure. Those words made my stomach twist. As the chaos settled, I felt two tiny hands tug at my scrubs. Mama, is he gonna die? My twins, Eli and Noah, stood barefoot at the doorway, their big eyes glistening with fear. They'd followed the noise from the staff room. And for a strange second, everyone looked at them, then at the man on the gurney, and went silent. The resemblance was uncanny. Same dark hair, same stubborn jawline. I swallowed hard. Go back inside, I whispered. Now. They hesitated, then ran off. When I turned back, the alpha's eyes flickered open. He stared at me, dazed, feverish. Don't let me die, he rasped, voice cracked but deep. And I couldn't answer. I just nodded, pressing his hand gently. Not tonight, I said. Not on my shift. The next morning, after 12 hours straight, I finally collapsed into the break room. Coffee gone cold. Paperwork scattered. My phone buzzed with another message from my landlord. Final notice. Payment overdue. Eviction next week. I rubbed my face, exhaustion burning behind my eyes. Everything was falling apart. The bills, the custody case, the endless double shifts. I'd been fighting to keep my twins after my ex walked out. The court said I wasn't stable enough. If I lost this job, I'd lose them too. So I stayed, even when my body begged for rest. Later that night, I went to check on him, the alpha from the accident. He was awake, sitting up against the pillows, monitors beeping quietly beside him. His hair had been washed, revealing sharp features, handsome in a cold, dangerous way. When he looked at me, it wasn't gratitude I saw. It was pride. You were the one last night, he said slowly. You saved me. I did what anyone would have done. Not anyone. Most people wouldn't care if a stranger bled out in front of them. I didn't know how to answer that. His voice was low, rough, but there was something underneath. A kind of weariness you only hear in people who've had everything and still feel empty. He glanced at my name tag. Nurse Ellis, he read. How long have I been here? 36 hours. You had a bad crash. Your kidneys took serious damage. He frowned. Kidneys. I hesitated. The doctors are running more tests. But you'll need a transplant. Soon. He laughed bitterly, like he didn't believe in soon. Figures, he muttered. Everything else in my life's breaking down. Why not my body too? He turned his face away, staring out the window at the city lights. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, thick with unspoken things. I tried to leave, but his voice stopped me. Why do your kids look like me? My breath caught. Excuse me. I saw them earlier. The twins. Same eyes. He wasn't smirking. He looked genuinely curious, almost suspicious. They're not yours, I said too quickly. They just got my bad luck in genetics. For a second, he almost smiled. Then his expression hardened again. You shouldn't bring kids into a place like this. You shouldn't crash your car into a wall. I shot back before I could stop myself. He blinked, then actually laughed. Soft. Real. It startled both of us. I see, he murmured. You're not scared of alphas. I turned away, flustered. Try to rest, mister. Darian, he said. Darian Holt. The name hit something in my memory. Holt Enterprises. Real estate. One of the biggest companies in the city. So that was him, the man who owned half the skyline. "Good night, Mr. Holt," I said, heading for the door. But before I left, I heard him whisper, barely audible, "Thank you, Nurse Ellis." 2 days later, his condition worsened. His kidneys were shutting down fast. Machines hummed. Tubes ran across his arms. He looked smaller now, fragile under all that strength. When I changed his he grabbed my wrist. His grip was weak but desperate. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked. I froze. "Why?" "Because I can't stop seeing your face every time I close my eyes. Like I've met you before." I wanted to say no. That fate didn't pay rent or feed kids. That it was a luxury for people who didn't bleed for every breath. But I couldn't lie, not when he looked at me like that. "Maybe," I whispered. "Maybe fate just works night shifts." He smiled faintly, then drifted into sleep. Hours later, I was standing outside his room when I overheard the doctors. "No compatible donors yet," one said. "He doesn't have much time." Something inside me twisted so hard I could barely breathe. I thought of my boys, of their laughter, of the man inside that room, proud and alone, fighting death in silence. I didn't know why, maybe because he reminded me of myself. But I walked straight to the testing room and signed the form. Compatibility test for Darian Holt. I didn't hesitate. That night, the hospital lights felt colder. Rain battered the windows. My twins slept on a bench outside the ICU, their small bodies curled together. I sat beside them, watching the storm blur the city into silver streaks. For once, I prayed. Not for money, not for luck, just for him to live. I shouldn't have looked at his chart. I shouldn't have cared. But every time I passed his room, I found myself stopping, just for a second, to make sure he was still breathing. 2 weeks had passed since the crash. The hospital had become quieter, but inside room 304, time moved differently. Machines hummed softly, marking each fragile heartbeat that tethered Darian Holt to this world. And somehow, without realizing it, I'd built my days around that sound. The first snow of the year fell the morning I learned he was getting worse. Kidney function's dropping again. Dr. Hahn told me as we walked down the hall. "We'll have to increase dialysis frequency. He needs a transplant, Ellis. Soon." I nodded, though my throat was dry. "Still no donors?" "None that match his rare blood type. We're expanding the search." He looked at me, tired and grim. "He's running out of time." When the doctor walked away, I stood there for a long minute, staring through the glass at the man lying in that bed. Even with pale skin and tubes everywhere, he looked composed, like even dying had to bow to his pride. That afternoon, I went in to check on him. He was sitting up, flipping through his phone, looking irritated. "Your vitals are stable," I said, adjusting his drip. "Stable," he repeated, voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's just another word for waiting to die, isn't it?" I glanced at him. "Not if you're stubborn enough to live." He looked up at me, something sparking behind those storm-gray eyes. "Are you calling me stubborn, Nurse Ellis?" "I'm saying you look like the kind of man who argues with God and expects to win." He laughed, soft, breathy. "Maybe I used to. Lately, I just argue with myself." There was silence after that. The kind that stretches too long, but doesn't feel uncomfortable. He broke it first. "How old are your boys?" 7, I said quietly. "Twins." His gaze softened, the first time I'd ever seen him look gentle. "You do all this alone?" "Yeah." Their other parent decided he wasn't ready for responsibility. Walked out before they could walk. Something flickered across Darian's face. Anger, pity, maybe both. "Then he's a fool." I forced a smile. "You're not wrong." He leaned back, closing his eyes. "You remind me of someone," he said. "My mother. She used to talk like that, soft but stubborn. Always said life was a fight you win by surviving. Sounds like a smart woman." "She was," he whispered, "until cancer took her kidneys. I couldn't even save her." I froze. Kidneys. So that's where the irony started. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet. Guess karma has a twisted sense of humor. For a moment, I forgot he was my patient. I just saw a man, tired, alone, terrified of disappearing without being seen. That night, when my shift ended, I didn't go home. I walked to the lab and asked for the results of the donor tests. My name was already on the list. The technician frowned. "You sure you want to see this?" I nodded. He printed a single page and handed it over. "Result, compatible. Perfect match." I stared at the words until they blurred. I was his match. Of all the people in this world, me. I walked out of the lab, trembling. My heart raced, Fear, disbelief, something in between. I thought of my boys, asleep in their beds at home. If I went through with this, I might not survive the surgery. But if I didn't, he would die. And somehow, that thought hurt more. The next few days blurred together. Darian's condition declined fast. He lost weight, color, even his temper. He'd wake gasping, sweating, clutching his side like knives were twisting inside him. "Painkillers," he'd croak, and I'd give them, pretending my hands weren't shaking. Each time I pressed the medication through his fore, I wondered if I was buying him another day or just delaying the inevitable. One evening, as I was changing his bandage, he suddenly said, "Do you have dreams, Ellis?" I blinked. Dreams. Things you want. Beyond this place. Beyond survival. I hesitated. I used to. What stopped you? Reality, I said simply. He smiled faintly. Reality's a cruel thief. And you? I asked. Do you still dream? His eyes softened. I used to dream of building something that lasted longer than I would. Now I just dream of living long enough to regret a few things. I swallowed. Don't talk like that. I'm serious, he said. I thought money could buy time. Turns out it only buys noise. The silence still catches up to you. He was right. We were two different people from two different worlds, yet the silence chased us both. By the end of that week, I couldn't stand it anymore. I filled out the form. Signed it. Voluntary kidney donation. Donor, Ellis Lane. Recipient, Darian Holt. I left the informed recipient section blank. He wouldn't know. Not until it was done. That night, I went home and watched my twins sleep. Their faces were peaceful, soft. I memorized them like I might not see them again. The next morning, when I arrived at the hospital, chaos erupted. Nurses ran down the hall. Machines screamed from room 304. He'd crashed again. Blood pressure dropping, oxygen plummeting. His body was giving up. Start resuscitation, Dr. Hahn shouted. I stood frozen by the door, my chest pounding. He was dying, and all I could think was, I'm too late. But somehow he pulled through. Barely. When the doctors left, I stayed behind, sitting by his bed. His face was pale, lips cracked, eyes fluttering. He reached out blindly and caught my hand. Ellis, he whispered, barely audible. If I die tonight, will you miss me? My throat burned. Don't say that. Answer me. Yes, I said. I'll miss you. He smiled faintly, eyes still closed. Then maybe I'll fight a little longer. He drifted off, hands still clinging to mine. I stayed until dawn, watching the light crawl across his sheets, trying to memorize the rhythm of his breathing. 3 days later, they prepped him for surgery. And me. The transfer papers were filed secretly. Only Dr. Hahn and the surgical team knew the truth. I wasn't supposed to say goodbye, but I couldn't leave without seeing him once more. He was lying there, pale and calm, staring at the ceiling. Ready? I asked softly. He turned his head, smiled weakly. For death or for life, whichever comes first. Don't joke. He studied my face. You look tired, Ellis. So do you. He chuckled faintly. If I don't make it, tell your boys to keep being brave. Something broke inside me at those words. He'd never even met them properly, yet he remembered. I wanted to tell him the truth right then, that I was his match, that I'd be on the table next to him. But instead, I just whispered, You're going to live, Darian. He frowned. How can you be so sure? Because I made sure of it. He didn't understand. He smiled faintly and closed his eyes. You're too good for this world, Ellis. If only he knew how much of me I was about to give up for him. The operating room was blinding white. The air smelled of antiseptic and fate. As they inserted the anesthesia, I looked up at the ceiling lights, round, bright, endless. My heart hammered, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I thought of his laugh, his voice, the way he'd said my name like it meant something. The world blurred. Please live, I thought, as everything went dark, even if it costs me everything. When I opened my eyes, the world was quiet. Too quiet. Pain burned through my side, deep and raw. Someone was speaking above me, Dr. Hahn's voice, soft and urgent. He's stable. It was close. We almost lost him on the table, but he's alive. I smiled weakly. He's alive. Dr. Hahn squeezed my hand. You should rest. You saved him. I tried to speak, but my voice was a whisper. Don't tell him it was me. He nodded, eyes heavy with sympathy. He won't know. Not unless you want him to. I closed my eyes. Outside the window, snow kept falling, slow, silent, endless. Somewhere down the hall, Darian Holt was breathing with my kidney inside him. And I lay there, half alive, half empty, knowing I'd given a stranger the part of me that wanted to live. I thought I'd never see him again. I told myself that was the best outcome, that he'd live his new life, and I'd quietly disappear into mine. But life has a strange way of circling back, especially when you've given away a piece of yourself. It had been 3 months since the surgery. 3 long, blurry months. The scar on my side still ached when I lifted heavy things, and my energy never fully returned. But I was alive. My twins were healthy. That was enough. Or that's what I kept telling myself. The hospital let me go during my recovery. Budget cuts, they said. I knew the truth. No one wanted a nurse who'd nearly died on the table. Bills piled up, rent went unpaid. I picked up odd shifts in clinics, anything that let me buy food for Eli and Noah. We moved into a cramped basement apartment that smelled like damp wood and loss. At night, when my boys were asleep, I'd press a hand to my scar and think of him. Darian Holt, the man whose heartbeat carried my rhythm now. Sometimes I imagined him laughing again, walking through his company's halls, alive and untouchable. And then I'd cry silently, wishing I could see that smile just once more. One cold morning, everything fell apart again. I'd been summoned to court, the final hearing for my custody case. My ex had filed another motion, arguing I was unfit because of my health and finances. The lawyer's words sliced through me. Single parent, unstable income, recent major surgery. Your Honor, this is not a safe environment for children. My voice cracked as I defended myself. I love my boys. I work every day. They're happy, ask them. But the judge's eyes were tired, detached. He granted temporary custody to my ex. I watched as my sons cried, calling my name while social workers led them out of the room. My knees buckled. I didn't even try to stop the tears this time. By the time I got home, my world felt empty. Their beds were cold, their toys untouched. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. A week passed, then another. I stopped going to work. There was no point. The walls of that apartment felt like a coffin, silent and suffocating. I sold my wedding ring, then my phone. The only thing I kept was the little photo of my boys smiling in front of the hospital fountain. The last day they'd come to pick me up from work. One rainy afternoon, I fainted in the hallway outside my apartment. My body had been screaming for rest for weeks, but I didn't listen. When I came to, there were voices, footsteps, the smell of something expensive, leather and storm. A hand touched my forehead. Ellis. That voice. I thought I was dreaming. Ellis, can you hear me? I forced my eyes open. He was there, Darian Holt, alive, whole, looking down at me with fear in his eyes. Darian, my throat burned. What are you doing here? He lifted me easily, like I weighed nothing. You shouldn't be living like this. How did you? Dr. Hahn told me, he said quietly. I found out last week. About the kidney. About everything. I froze. He wasn't supposed to. I had to know, he cut in, voice trembling with anger and guilt. For months, I searched for the name of my donor. And when I found out it was you, his voice cracked. You gave me your kidney, Ellis. You nearly died for me. I looked away. You were dying. That's not an answer. I tried to push away from him, but he caught me, his hands firm yet gentle. Why? He asked again. Why would you risk your life for a man like me? I closed my eyes, tears spilling down my cheeks. Because I couldn't stand watching you die, I whispered. Because I knew what it felt like to have no one fight for you. He didn't speak. He just pulled me into his chest, holding me like I was something precious. For the first time, he wasn't the powerful alpha everyone feared. He was just a man, shaking quietly, breathing in the scent of the person who'd saved him. He took me to his home that night. Not a hospital, not a cold room, his home. A sprawling penthouse that overlooked the city, all glass and light. I didn't belong there. I knew at the moment I stepped inside. But he refused to let me leave. You'll stay here until you're healthy, he said firmly. And your boys. I don't have them anymore, I interrupted. The court took them. The silence that followed was heavy. He turned slowly, eyes darkening. Who took them? My ex. He claimed I couldn't provide. Darian's jaw tightened. What's his name? Don't. I started, but he was already making a call. Within days, things I didn't understand started happening. Lawyers appeared. Court documents were refiled. When I protested, he just said, "Let me fix this. Please." And he did. 2 weeks later, my boys ran into my arms again, crying and laughing at the same time. I fell to my knees, sobbing into their hair. Behind us, Darian stood quietly, watching with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. When the boys went to bed that night, I found him on the balcony, staring at the city. "You didn't have to do all this," I said. He turned, his gaze soft. "You didn't have to save my life." We stood there for a moment, the wind cold but gentle between us. Then he took a step closer. His fingers brushed my scar, light as a whisper. "You gave me a part of you," he murmured, "and I don't know how to live without repaying that." "You already did," I said. "You gave me my family back." He smiled faintly. "That's not enough." Before I could ask what he meant, he leaned in and pressed his forehead against mine. No words, just warmth. His breath trembled against my skin. It wasn't a kiss, it was a promise. Days turned into weeks. I started working again, part-time at a clinic near his company. The twins adored him. Eli called him Mr. Darian, and Noah proudly said, "He's the man who helped Mama." He'd laugh softly every time. We became something fragile but real. Late dinners, quiet laughter, the kind of peace neither of us had known before. But peace never lasts forever. It happened one night when I came home late from work. Darian was waiting in the kitchen, papers in his hands. "Ellis," he said, voice low, "you didn't tell me you've been getting sick again." I froze. "It's nothing. It's not nothing." He slammed the test results onto the table. "You're rejecting your own remaining kidney. Your body's failing, and you didn't say a damn word." "I didn't want to worry you," I whispered. He laughed bitterly. "Worry me? You think I could live knowing you're dying because of me?" His voice cracked. "I can't lose you, Ellis." Tears filled my eyes. "You weren't supposed to care this much." "Well, I do," he shouted, then stopped, breath ragged. "I do. More than I've ever cared about anything." He stepped closer, voice trembling now. "You saved my life. Let me save yours." "How?" I asked, broken. "There's nothing you can do." "I can try," he whispered. "I'll find another donor, another treatment, whatever it takes. I won't let you go." I saw him cry. The proud, untouchable alpha, on his knees, begging the universe not to take me. I cupped his face, thumb brushing away the tears. "Hey," I said softly. "You already saved me." He frowned. "When?" "The moment you came back." A month later, I was back in the hospital, weak but alive. He never left my side. He brought my boys every day, read to them while I slept, held my hand when the pain came. Sometimes I'd wake in the night to find him watching me, eyes red, jaw tight, as if daring death to try again. When the doctors finally said I'd recover, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. As I sat by the window, he knelt in front of me, resting his head against my knees. "I thought I knew what love was," he murmured. "But then you gave me your life, and I realized I've never even tried to deserve someone before." I smiled weakly. "You don't have to deserve me. Just stay." He looked up at me, eyes full of something fierce and trembling. "Always." Sometimes I still touch the scar on my side and feel the steady pulse beneath it, the echo of his heartbeat, now entwined with mine. We saved each other in ways no one else would understand. He took my kidney, but in return, he gave me a reason to keep living. And maybe that's what love really is. Two broken people keeping each other alive, one heartbeat at a time.